Hello, I'm football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Foot Weekly Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to week 3 of the Foot Weekly Podcast. This is your gameplay episode, and as you'd expect, I am joined by Josh Axels. Hello, Josh. Welcome back.
Yeah, good to be on a public podcast. We've had 2 records for the supporters, and now we've got the first. Is this the first proper gameplay pod for the cycle?
It is, yeah.
And I think it's probably coming at an apt time.
Yeah, I feel like people are starting to think, what is going on with gameplay? How can I get better? We've got the first champs coming, both baby and full-sized champs as well, which, we'll get plenty of tips in for that with our gameplay expert on this episode and the man behind, or one of the men behind the guide. It is TaZz. Hello, TaZz. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and it's my premiere with a face cam here, so I'm very excited.
Yeah.
First time I can show my presence here. Hey guys.
The video debut, we've got a few people out. You're one of them. I think I didn't mention quite soon enough that you're going to be on video, so you had to beautify yourself in record time.
Apologize my appearance, okay?
To remind you, you can catch the pod in video form on YouTube, and if you're watching through Patreon, then the video is on Patreon as well. So let's dive into I guess the first topic that we have today. Well, actually, why don't we start a bit more generally? I guess I know it's a very broad and difficult question to start with, but TaZz, how has your feelings on gameplay changed over the last week or two as you've been playing 𝗪𝗀𝗻𝘀?
I feel like for me personally, it was an up and down. Like at the beginning, I was pretty hyped about it, was having a lot of fun. Like I feel like EA delivered quite well on those things they have in mind. And also I feel like what was so unique about this year is that we have such a major cleanup about the game and not so many new features. So this is also a little bit different for me, because usually I would be heavily invested in those new features, like trying this out, getting some examples for this, creating content around it. But this year, it's more about just the core of the gameplay. And I feel like they did a lot of good things. So when it comes to tackle backs and intercept backs and stuff like this, overall, I think you notice quite a lot that this is improved and more satisfying in a lot of those kind of situations. But then at some point, I was getting really frustrated about this kind of defending style, which was evolving within the community, that everybody was just running back with midfielders and attackers, which was or is still so dominant within the community that everybody is doing this. For me, this is something that I was fighting, or I was fighting for years, basically, that this is not the proper way of defending, because it's so skillless, to be very honest here, in my opinion. But at some point, I noticed okay, it seems like I also have to do this, because defending is so challenging. My way of defending was not working for some time, and I was a little bit frustrated about this, losing a bit of my identity in a way, how I was playing the game. But I think at some point I noticed still this kind of pulling back with defenders is also not, with midfielders, is also not the right approach to it. There's still a lot of things that you can do. You just have to manage a little bit more your aggression and where you can actually move out and those kind of things. So these are learnings, and I feel like if I compare this with the last couple of years, this kind of how much I actually have to change in my behavior, I feel like this is more on the side where I have to relearn and change a lot of things. So overall, I would say it's a cool experience, and I really notice also the kind of improvements day by day, I would say, as well. So I would say pretty satisfying.
Yeah, I guess if you're in the business of learning and improving, then it's an interesting game, because there's a lot of changes, and I think it feels like every few days I'm kind of I need to think about what I'm doing defensively in these situations, because someone's doing this particular thing that I haven't come across yet, and that's causing me problems, and a bit of adaptation. And sometimes I'm playing games where my opponent really does just get through me in a way that I wasn't really expecting, because I wasn't kind of ready for that particular approach that they've taken. And I think that's something that can happen in the early stages. But with this year's game and how punishing defense mistakes can be, you do see opponents running away with it, but then you'll come back, right? So it is quite wild. And I know for some people, Josh, that's maybe been not what they want out of an Ultimate Team experience. It does feel a lot more arcadey, but we are still in this kind of learning phase of the game where attacking play just does have an advantage because people aren't used to defending in this way.
Yeah, I think this is probably part of the problem when the game has moved so competitive, that when you then get to a game where I think this is probably the biggest like learning curve we've had of any new release game to game. People are a lot worse at this game than they think they should be. And when the game is built on winning and that push to win has been so prevalent within the community, they're now saying this is unenjoyable because they're not winning and they're struggling. And so, I completely get that. And I maybe this was too much too quickly from like the gameplay perspective. Maybe it needed to be eased in over time, but there is now a skill to defending, and there is a skill to kind of being able to put pressure on people without overcommitting yourself. Like the way I've been thinking about is like controlled aggression. Whereas in previous games, you could both not go after the player at all and just let the computer defend for you, or you could be hyper aggressive and it was very difficult to get away from it because dribbling wasn't very good and passing wasn't very good. So now you have to find that balance, and I think in finding that balance, people are struggling, and that's causing people to feel like they're not having a good time. And I'm not saying that they're wrong. I have felt that as well. The first Gauntlet came out, and I went 1-2, and I was watching people go 3-0, and I was like, oh god, I am really, really bad at this game, like in a way that I wasn't expecting to be, and then went into Rivals, and I won 3 games on the bounce from Rivals. I was like, no, I just got unlucky. And then I lost 2 Rivals games in a row again the next time I went to play, and I was like, oh god, I really am bad. So but my reaction to that wasn't the game's bad, which I think has been the change in sentiment we've seen on Twitter over the last kind of 3 or 4 days. I think as people have kind of got to their level in Rivals, as we've got a slightly more competitive mode in Gauntlet, even though I don't think it's that competitive. I just think we're getting, and also as a lot of the kind of pro tactic, this is the best tactic to help you if you can't defend, which is essentially just get as many men behind the ball as possible and play a super low depth. As those tactics have become more prevalent, I think it's become a slightly more frustrating game to be bad at. Then because you could be bad at a game and still enjoy it, right? I'm terrible at first person shooter games, but I can still enjoy them. Whereas I think 26 is a really bad game. Like, it's really unenjoyable when you're not very good at it, because it just feels like you're not in control of anything. So I'm enjoying the game now. Having gone from where I was on that first Gauntlet, it was only 2 days ago. I essentially spent 6 hours going, okay, what do I need to get better at? I had a bit of a coaching session with a bunch of people who were going 15-0 last year, who kind of said, you need to do this, this, and this. And I now feel like I'm enjoying the game again, because I feel like I've got more agency over specifically defending.
Yeah, we might come on to that actually in a second. And actually, I think we'll move on. I know we talked about it a lot last week, defending, but I think it would make sense to speak again about, I guess defending more broadly, because I think one of the things that people talk about is it's really hard to defend counter-attacking situations, right? And I think that is something that is quite clear. That is really tough. And I think actually, I saw Dr. Nightwatch, Ivan, who's been on the podcast many times, feeding back about this directly to EA about how transitional defending is extremely hard, and that's probably fine because it should be hard. But actually, when the defense gets set, it can be quite hard to break down. I think that's a point of kind of more debate, and I guess it's something that we can move on to here. Do you agree that it's hard to break down set defenses, TaZz, or is it more just that people are only just kind of finding out what works against those defenses? And yeah, I guess first of all, that's the question. Then we can move on to maybe advice on how to do that.
No, I think I agree. This is something that I feel like I'm also still learning, because, this kind of defending style that I mentioned, this kind of pulling back of midfielders and attackers is so prevalent. And at the end, if you're not able to break this down in the transitional play, you might end up against this kind of stacked defense. And I feel like day by day, I'm learning more on how to handle this in a proper way. So I think we all have to learn a little bit more about how to actually exploit this kind of way of defending. And for some, it's going to take a little bit longer, and some will be a little bit faster in learning this. I think it also comes down on what kind of tools you already have. I think there are some ways on how to break this down. I think we will talk about this later on, but I agree. And also, like, this kind of, you will face this very often, that when you lose the ball or when you just won the ball, how easy it is to like just counterattack and go into this kind of quick transition, because the midfield, especially in those situations, it feels like it's non-existent. By the way, that's why like at the beginning I was a little bit afraid of playing the 4-4-2 with like just the two CMs, because I was thinking this is also contributing to this quite a lot, because the CMs, they don't act as much in the defense or help in those kind of transitional situations.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I guess, just to tangent a bit, Josh, you were talking about pro tactics, or I guess just tactics that are being recommended to people to help with this. And I guess that is primarily because of that issue with the midfield, maybe not really having the AI positioning to help you out as much. Is that right? I mean, and is that why people are manually controlling their midfielders to try and do that?
So I think there's multiple reasons. I don't necessarily know that it's that the midfield is non-existent, that the tactics have become prevalent. I think it's more that people can't one-on-one defend as well as they used to be able to. And so it's now about having numbers back to kind of try and block people out. I do think that the AI doesn't track runs very well. And I understand when that's frustrating, because it frustrates me too. The bit that I don't like about it is that some roles track runs far better than others. For example, if you have a fullback on balanced, they won't track an inside forward making a run between them and the fullback, like between a centre back and a fullback. But if you have them on fullback defend, they will track the run, which means you can only really play with fullback defend or false back defend, which is something I've started experimenting with. But like, it's those things where I think the lack of AI tracking is wrong. If we're not going to have any AI run tracking in those situations, don't have it for any role, because otherwise you force people to then use the most defensive fullback role, and that's all you ever come up against is a flat back four, and now people are playing with two DMs because, yeah, the midfield doesn't track very well either. But I personally, I think those tactics are just as much about helping people defend as they are about helping people counterattack. It's about having 6 players behind the ball and then 4 that they can just launch the ball up to and try and counterattack to go and score, because no one's patient enough around the box to break anybody else down. And when you get 2 of those formations against each other, of course there's no midfield, because the midfields are so defensive on either side, and the other 4 are just up the pitch. So when the ball does turn over, there's nobody in like a 30-yard gap of the pitch. So yeah, I get it, right? I get why people are going for them. It's just not a fun way to play the game. And I don't think that's because the game's not fun. I think people just don't want to lose. And so it's the formation that gives you the most chance of winning, not because of how skilled you are. And that's why people are using it.
Yeah. I mean, the fact is, if you're relying on counter-attacking goals, then when you come up against a defence that is just going to sit there and an opponent that's not going to push players forward, then you're more likely to kind of get caught out by that and probably countered yourself, essentially. So I do think that I guess it makes sense. The most kind of meta way to score when you can't, or you feel you can't break down a set defense, is to play on the counter. But is going to make it less enjoyable, probably.
It's interesting, right, though, because we're saying counter's the most effective way to score, but the second most common thing I'm seeing is people just spinning around on the ball and it's impossible to defend.
The second most common complaint is basically that.
If we're complaining about defending, it's not that the counterattack's really difficult, it's that people are just spinning around on the ball and I can't defend them. So that would suggest to me that's more of a controlled possession. If you're able, if you're holding the ball and you're turning in a circle and you're being patient on it. So I think it's just that people can't defend full stop. I don't think it's that counters are more difficult to defend than controlled possession, because I think when people are someone who's good passing the ball around on the edge of the box, someone who's good with left stick, someone who knows that don't hold the left stick all the way to the edge of the controller, just hold it a little bit to kind of get a body movement and then go the other way, and you get a much quicker exit. Like, those types of things are just as difficult to defend against as counterattacks, but people would sooner like have all of those numbers back to try and kind of just crowd out the like controlled possession. So yeah, like it works against both aspects of the play. I don't know. Yeah, it's frustrating. Like, this week, I've been quite like vocal on Twitter saying that I don't think the problem is the game. I think the problem's the way people are playing it. And I know that seems a little counterintuitive, and like some people would see it as victim blaming, but I don't know. Like, the game's just the game is fun. And like let's go to counter defending, because we do want to talk about like tips, right? The way that I would always defend counters, because I thought I was a very good counterattack defender in previous games, and the way that I defended was to slow somebody down, not to try and win the ball back, but just to like cut off that forward pass, to make them turn back at one point, to have a good second man press while I could sprint back with another player. You can't really do that this year. The dribbling is so good that you can't just leave the player on the ball alone. And the passing is so crisp and quick that you can't really try and cut off passing lanes, because you can only really cut off one, and they will have a second pass option on. So you have to be more aggressive in counterattack defending. And this is where I was going to that like controlled aggression. The way that you slow down counterattacks is to get right up into a player's face and then pause and stop and kind of like make them almost run into you or turn around. And if they do either of those things, you'll either win the ball or you'll have slowed down the counterattack. And it's just for me, it's been a complete shift in the way that I'm defending in those situations, is to put pressure on the ball carrier rather than to cut off their options, which I just don't think is as effective this year.
Yeah, that makes sense actually, because I'm a bit of like an over aggressive defender, and like I feel like actually things haven't changed hugely for me in terms of how I defend counters, because I would always just slam into people if I could, and foul, and generally foul them.
You can't get sent off this year. I don't think I've had a single straight red card yet.
Get sent off doing that once, but I was trying to use the like pull from behind. They were slightly too far away, so I did like an aggressive slide. Like kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was
Brexit
enough of an angle. I thought it was enough of an angle, but it clearly wasn't. Anyway, moving swiftly on from that. Aside from, I guess, TaZz, we should move on to you talking about this kind of topic. Would you agree with what Josh has said? I would quite like to move on to talking about kind of set defenses, because we did talk about counter-attacking last week. But is there anything you wanted to kind of add on defending counters?
I think when Josh explained it, I think it showed how complicated this kind of matter is. I feel like in general, it's very hard to speak in general terms, because you will see a lot of like specific situations. I won't agree to everything what he said, but I think there's a lot of things that are right, because I personally think, for example, run tracking of the AI defenders can be very good, because when people, for example, I'm on a counterattack, I have the ball with my cam, for example, and my opponent goes for this kind of chasing play style, like defensive play style, just chasing me from the back instead of switching to a defender. I notice it's not as easy always to find a pass. I'm looking for those kind of options. I'm using triggering runs. I'm doing directed runs. But as long as the defensive structure is there, in that case, most often it's a defensive line of four people. If they are like in place, they do pretty decent run tracking that it's not directly as easy to find a through ball, for example. And this makes it so frustrating for me to play against, for example, this defending playstyle. So I feel like there are like the AI defending can be good against run tracking, but there will be situations, maybe it's dependent on the roles. There's a lot to uncover, I feel like, when the run tracking is not as good. Overall, I think when it comes to counter-attacking or like defending those kind of transitional counter-attacks, etc., this can be problematic for you really fast if you like really hurt your defensive structure, like pulling out players. And I think this is something that I was doing extremely at the beginning. I had this tendency either like actually going fast to a center back, pulling them out, because in 25 and before, you were getting away with that, because either you just won the ball, or if your opponent had to do the sidestep or like found a way around you, then the rest of your defensive line was at least also pushing up a bit. and the AI attackers, they were just running through. So even though your opponent was getting around you, they didn't have a pass to play. But now in 26, it's more like that you will have at least one defender who's still like running back and like keeps all the other attackers on side. And the AI defending is not as good as filling those gaps, for example. So like then you're in trouble real fast. And I did this with center backs, but I also did this, for example, with fullbacks. And with fullbacks, it's also really problematic because then the runs of the wingers, for example, they are really good on keeping onside. And as I said, like in the center, you'll have someone who keeps them onside. So then you're running in trouble real fast. So you have to find your way of like maybe like deciding in the situation how much. Maybe sometimes it's just like moving out a bit, like giving this kind of feeling that you are putting some aggression onto them, and then you're not really going fully with that. But also I noticed like I was baiting a lot. I love to bait in a way that I was just moving out a bit, give the opponent the impression that they can play a pass here soon, so they will be focused on that, but then they lose time on like, oh, I can't play that pass, and then all of a sudden they are slowed down. But it's like a lot of situations where it's like very like specific for the situation how to handle this, and I think this makes it so challenging. And as soon as you make a slight error, it's very hard, like very easy for the opponent to punish this. So unfortunately, like the game is hard, I would say, when it comes to those kind of things, and you have to find really a lot of middle ground ways or solutions.
You can't like dive on a pass that you think they're going to play.
Yeah.
Because if they don't play it, you're just completely out of position. Sometimes it's better to just allow the pass, but as long as the pass doesn't put you in more danger than them kind of continuing to hold the ball, sometimes you're better off just marking the more dangerous thing. Because if you try and dive for a cutback that they don't play, you're just completely out of position. There's no way for you to get back.
Yeah, I was going to actually add, like, although I was saying quite reckless, I guess, defending, I really have this cycle made sure that I'm not doing that with centre backs and fullbacks. Like, the rest of the players, like, I'll allow myself, try not to do it too much with the defensive midfielders. But yeah, with the fullbacks and centre backs, as you say, the AI positioning is actually pretty good when you're not controlling them. But as soon as you control one of them, like, it goes so out of whack that you can really lead yourself into huge problems. They can just play a through ball through and they're in. So
something that I'm experimenting right now with, and I'm not really come to a final conclusion, but early on I switched from defend to stopper as a role for the center backs, and I had the impression that based on that, like, you will get this kind of pushing up in those situations more often from your colleagues basically also. So this can help to get them like earlier offside, for example. And also like avoid those situations where you have like, because I saw that very often that one of the center backs, like while I was having this center back like pushing up a bit, like facing the opponent, my colleague was like, I'm just going to run back and like get everybody on side. So I felt like I wasn't observing this as often. Also like this automatic offset trap, I felt like I saw all of a sudden, because like in 25, 24, it was like all over the place. In 26, I don't see it much anymore, even though I'm playing on like high defensive approach. And then lately I switched from stopper to defender balanced with the same idea. If you look at the heat map and also the description, it says like they will push up more. And maybe this is something like I have to really test it more often and like really pay attention to all of those situations. But overall, I like the trend, or like what I'm experiencing right now. And I think at least from the theory point, maybe this helps also to deal with those situations a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I've also been using defender balanced. I think it was Bert in the Sports Discord was saying that it was helping him apply more pressure, and I spotted that and was like, actually, yeah, like my centre backs, that's why I was trying to control them, I think, because I didn't feel like they were applying enough pressure. So if you can get them to do that without you doing it, it makes a big difference, and you can control other players. So yeah, I think that's a good tip. So yeah, defender balanced. So balanced is the focus, just to be clear. Defender being the role. Yeah, and actually also ball playing. I think it's ball playing balance. They seem to apply a bit more pressure as well. So I mean, basically defend, right? Is the kind of most passive, I guess, of the options. So that explains it.
And I think this is always so tricky that we just apply the same defaults that we have from the last couple of years, and we expect that they work the same, or like that they are also as good as the last years. And maybe this is just, we need all to give ourselves more time to actually try out all the options, understand what they do. And maybe there is a fix in the game which we haven't discovered yet.
Yeah. No, totally right.
Yeah, I'd also say in terms of that, like defender defend, take your goalkeeper off goalkeeper defend.
Yes,
because they're way too static on their line. Whereas when you put even on goalkeeper balanced, you'll notice them be way more aggressive when they come out. They'll be quicker to come off their line. Their like starting position is a little bit further out. And when when you get like a long ball that comes over the top, they'll do a bit of like sweeper keeping to come and grab it. So like it's those, like there are some settings that are just on by default that if you don't touch that are going to hurt you because there are better alternatives.
Yeah, and if you have a goalkeeper with rush out, and especially rush out plus, I'd definitely have them on sweeper keeper because it can really catch people out, especially if you're getting busy with the Y triangle button to get them out even quicker. Because I mean, I don't know whether we want to move on to shooting yet, but like shooting does feel a bit automatic. I mean, goals feel a bit automatic from shots in a lot of situations. So applying pressure from the keeper pretty quickly can be good, even though chips are quite effective actually. So
yeah, maybe we should go back to like attacking a set defense, and then once you've got through that set defense, then we can talk about shooting.
Yeah, good idea. And in fact, we definitely need to take a break. So we'll do that now, and we'll come back to talk about tips for attacking a set defense. Hello, and in this break, a quick reminder that the pod is made possible by supporters. The pod didn't used to be weekly. Yes, Foot Weekly wasn't actually weekly for a time. And then someone suggested setting up the Patreon. And since then, the pod has been weekly. And in fact, it's been twice weekly because there is that supporter episode every single week. So if you'd like to catch that episode and keep the podcast going, it's just £3 a month to do so. And you get loads in return. And there are perks higher than that, including access to the Discord too. So if you're interested and would like to support the podcast, then head over and search Support for Weekly. Go to Patreon and it's very easy to sign up. If you are a supporter keeping the podcast going, then a huge thank you for doing so. And if you do consider supporting, a huge thank you too. Right, let's jump back into the pod. Hello, welcome back after the break. Right, let us get into attacking a set defense. It's definitely one of the things people have been asking about. TaZz, what would your kind of number one techniques be for attacking a set defense? And I guess maybe we want to make these tips that don't require someone to be exceptional at left stick dribbling, because I think for top level players that is generally how they're doing it, but that is something that takes a while to master. People should obviously be trying it, getting used to it, but any kind of other things.
Yeah, sure. I feel like when I'm running into a set defense is most often because I was trying to counterattack, didn't succeed. I end up on the wing, for example, and something that I feel like from the general game plan here works pretty good is that we recycle the ball, get the ball from the wing to the central positions. And here it's very crucial that you just pay attention to what's happening, like either inside the box or at the edge of the box. Like this is the area that we would like to get the ball into, at least like my game approach, if I'm able to do so. And most of we just have to, for example, play the ball like in the central midfield or like between the wingers and the central midfielder, and like try to find passing options and lanes to the edge of the box. And from here, like there are several things I would say that you can use. One, I feel like, which is heavily improved in comparison to 25, even though I got a little bit of comments about like they don't agree, is controlled sprint. And especially in those situations, it can be very good after, like look for those, like this is like the number one, look for the passes towards your players at the edge of the box or inside the box. And then if you get the ball, for example, at the edge of the box to a striker, like try to control the ball. If you like have to have like develop an understanding what the opponent might like cover up more often, or like where they feel like they should cover, go to the other side. If you have some like in a little bit of an opening, then use controlled sprint. It's super strong. Like control the ball, go to one side. If you have a little bit of a gap, like punish that gap with a controlled sprint just for a few touches. And like this in particular punish those kind of people that don't like to switch to center backs, because then in those situations the AI defenders are way too slow to like really cover this off. And then you like, if you do it the right way, and we, by the way, have a tutorial video at the Guide Plus about this in particular, about how to use a controlled sprint in those situations, you will get into those finishing spots on its own. And then another way, which I'm still underusing, I would say, is also when you are like inside the box or like at the edge of the box, is fake shots. Fake shots, I feel like also in comparison, I like to always compare what was good or like not so good in the last couple of years. Fake shots, last couple of years, or like last year, you needed the trickster fake shot or like the trickster playstyle. In 26, I feel like also without the trickster playstyle, you still get, I feel like, better or smoother animations, which are not so static, not so heavy committing into one direction. And also, since like we all know, we just talked about it, defending is harder, especially 1v1. It's harder to tackle, it's harder to position yourself in the right spot. Fake shots can punish this also quite good. So I feel like these kind of tools can help quite a lot if you're looking for those kind of like how to break down a set defense just into those 1v1 situations. Controlled sprint, fake shots, very good. And then obviously trigger and runs, 1-2 passes, for example. This will help you to also create a little of spaces because the defensive structure will not be like just unharmed and then everybody will be just standing there in perfect positions, because there will be some run tracking. This will give us some spaces also in between those kind of defenders. So these are the tools that I would mainly focus on, like breaking down a set defense.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to highlight a controlled sprint, or technical, I guess some people call it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's holding R1/RB, but it uses the technical play style. Ideally, I think actually without technical, only the top dribblers will feel that good with it. You kind of need technical or technical plus, ideally. Although it does kind of work, but like definitely think that helps a lot. And just the fact that increases your dribbling speed without really sacrificing control is really big. And the number of times, especially if the defender isn't a defender who has like anticipate plus or anticipate, so can't just kind of reach a leg out and manage to win it off you in a kind of slightly lucky way, it really does like open. I mean, just means you can go into gaps which you wouldn't have otherwise been able to go into. And like all the time, I'm maybe doing a little bit of left stick dribbling, or maybe even using the L1 dribble where you can kind of shift side to side, just shifting one way, then going back the other, and you just open up enough space to like controlled sprint or technical through that is just such a common way for me to open up space. And I'd also say, like, maybe it feels a little more advanced, but it is pretty easy. It's just doing the effort touch, so flicking the right stick while you're doing it just gives you a little bit of extra acceleration, and you can actually do that and then let go of the technical or controlled sprint button, and they'll get a bit of acceleration to go through a gap. And I think if you can do that, that'll help a lot, because I can tell my opponent sometimes like opens up a bit of space but then doesn't really know how to exploit it, because they don't know how to kind of increase their speed enough to take advantage of it without sprinting, or essentially without sprinting, because if you try and sprint into that gap, you'll take a touch that's heavy enough that often a defender that you're not up against, like from somewhere else, will just come in and take the ball. So I do think that controlled sprint is probably the thing I'd learn. I think I saw maybe a video you did on it pop up on like social media or something. So there is I know you have like an extended guide, I'm sure, on the guide plus. But you might also have a video you can watch about technical dribbling, right?
Yeah, like there's also, I created a shorts about it, how to use controlled sprint in those situations as well. So go to the guide at YouTube.
Yeah, that was good for kind of showing the angles that you probably want to take to do that. So yeah, that was good. I'm sure there are plenty more tips actually that we could get to. But yeah, Josh, is it something that you've been using recently?
So I'm going to use the way that AA9 Skills actually talks about it. And he talks about passing north to south rather than east to west. The idea being passing sideways across the pitch rather than trying to go too vertical in the way that you're attacking, like going straight at the goal. I think the game this year is almost a game of who can stay the most calm on both sides of the ball. And if you are more calm on the ball than your opponent is defending, you're more likely to score, because they're going to be committing players, they're going to be dragging players out. Whereas if you can just take those extra touches, recognize that everyone's struggling with defending, and one-on-one defending in particular. So you have the advantage when you're on the ball. Just take your time. It's not about, you don't need to be insane at left stick. It's just changing the angle with which you're controlling the ball every now and then, just going like faking to go one way, moving the ball the other. And then if you notice that your opponents kind of come back to try and get you, you can fake back the other way and they will massively overcommit because they think that they've already lost you. So there's just like little moments of trying to win one-on-one battles. But that thing about recycling, like in terms of not needing any like really quick motor functions kind of thing, just passing the ball across the edge of the box, taking your time with it, making sure the pass is on, waiting for them essentially to pull a player out of position, and then you've got the pass into a striker who's just got one defender to beat. And it doesn't really matter what skill level you are. If you have an attacker versus a defender and you're essentially one-on-one, you have the advantage in this game. And so they're the kind of situations you want to create. You don't want to pass it into a striker when they've got a DM right on them and they've got another centre-back there and the fullback's coming across. That you're going to find that difficult. But if you can just stretch the play, be patient on the ball, people don't like not having the ball in this game, so they want to win it back. And they might have a bit of patience, and essentially you just need to test how long they have that patience for until you find the right entry point. I really like the heel to ball roll this year. In terms of a skill move that can properly beat defenders, once they're committed to you, the heel to ball roll is massive. So that's just holding LB and then on the right stick flicking in the direction you're running and flicking back. So it's like a heel to heel, but just holding LB. And they essentially pull the ball back, which makes it very difficult to win, and then ball roll it either to the left or to the right. And it gives you a bit of a speed boost as you kind of then have that direction moving forward. So that's massive. And then the final thing I'd say is the fastest you should ever move in the final third when a defense is set is using controlled sprint. At no point should you ever be touching the sprint button. The moment you touch the sprint button, you're asking to lose the ball. You're asking for a bad touch. If you do a fake shot off of a sprint, you get a much worse animation because the ball's kind of a bit further away and then they kick it a bit further away. So for me, it's all been about calming it down when you're on the ball. People will make mistakes defensively, and it's way easier this year to kind of punish those mistakes.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, one other skill I wanted to mention, and I'm just trying to multitask here, looking up the controls for it, is the stop and go move. You, I think, hold LT, and so LT or L2, right? And then you flick the right stick back and then forward, so back behind the player and then forward the way the player's going. And they'll do this kind of it's quite a weird looking, it looks natural, but it sounds kind of weird. But they do this kind of like, oh, I'm going to stop, and they're not going to stop, and then they keep going, and you can actually
plant their forward foot and turn the body, and then keep the momentum going in the direction they're running. Yeah, and it actually, I found it really effective, especially in the slightly more wide areas, just because the defensive player then thinks, oh, they're going to go backwards, so they're going to stop, and because players are so mobile, they really kind of because attacking players are so mobile, the defensive player has to account for that in a way that perhaps in previous years they wouldn't have had to account for it, because they can probably catch up to them or track them enough that they don't need to think about it. But they do in this game, and that makes it really effective, I've found. So definitely do that. TaZz, you've actually raised your hand, which nobody's ever done, so we'll definitely come to you.
And I didn't do it just this. I used the functionality here in this software. But I think it's handy because now I can raise my hand and say, I have something, because now everybody of you brought a skill move into this discussion. And I want to talk about one that is new, but even though it's new, I don't see a lot of people talking about it. And I think the only explanation that I have is that it requires 5-star skills, and 5-star skillers are not so prevalent right now. So maybe not everybody has one. But if you have a 5-star skiller, the new elastico variation is super busted, in my opinion. From my point of view, it's completely under the radar. The kind of direction change you get with that and this kind of slick animation is super strong. So what you do is you press L2 or LT, and do a half circle behind your player like the normal elastico that you do. But instead of just getting the elastico, your player like goes a little bit to the side, and depending if you go from the right to the left, you're going to exit more to the left side, and if you go from left to right with a half circle, you exit more to the right side. So if your opponent is, for example, in front of you a little bit to the side, and they think, for example, in the box they can actually win the ball, in that moment they're coming from the right side, you exit to the right side, you just pull the ball back a bit and then do the elastico around them. It's so, like, the animation is so fast, and like
so
what we always have to consider if we have a new skill, people don't know the skill move. They don't know how to defend this. They don't take like this into account or like consider that this is a possibility because they don't know it. And like they just misposition themselves because of they don't know it. And therefore it's so strong, and I can highly recommend trying it out. And if you want to really go into the spots, obviously at the Guide Plus, we have a tutorial about it.
I was going to say, like, I would say with skill moves, this is a great year for learning skill moves because a lot of them are very effective. They're quicker than they have been. There's less chaining penalty. They're just generally like more fun to use. And I think one thing I would say about skill moves, if you're kind of getting to grips with them, things like the elastico are a bit trickier because you have to kind of do a circular motion between specific points on the right stick. So they are actually slightly harder to learn. If you're not particularly someone who knows skill moves or has been learning skill moves, I wouldn't start with them, but you can move on to them later. Skills like the 𝘬𝘯𝘰𝗀𝘀, which requires simply going behind the player and in front of the player, essentially with the right stick, tend to be easier to start with because the tricky thing about skill moves isn't sort of, I don't think, knowing what to do, and it's more kind of orientating. I always get confused between this happened last podcast. It's more about orientating yourself in terms of what direction you're going to move the right stick, if that makes sense. So you need to think about like your player's position versus how you're moving that right stick. So if it's just behind and in front, or in front and behind, then that's fairly straightforward. But obviously when it's like rotating the right stick, it's a bit more complicated and hard to learn. But I always say I know plenty of people who, because I banged on about it, started learning skill moves and now love them, and have incorporated more and more into their game, and it's perfectly possible. Don't be put off because you've never done skill moves before, and a lot of them like are actually easier to learn than you think. So give it a go. Nice. Well, I'll get off my skill move high horse, and maybe we'll take another break there actually, because we're going to move on to talking potentially actually about a few settings we think that are relevant, and actually we'll cover shooting as we promised. Hello, welcome back after the break. Right, let us get into talking about having beaten that defense, which was set, and you've done about 50 different skill moves to get through it based on our advice on this podcast, and the defense opens up, you get your chance on goal. And I think we have talked about this already, this cycle, and I think we talked about it before the start of the cycle, saying you should be switching on precision, start to practice, because without time finishing, that is how you'll get your I guess marginal gain. I mean, I don't think it's even that marginal. I think it's just a gain in terms of your shooting ability. But Josh, you had doubts at one point apparently over the last week.
Yeah, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I turned off precision shooting. Effectively, it was in the finale tournament, the early access finale tournament. I'd got to the final, and it was just one of those games. I should have won it comfortably and missed a bunch of chances. The worst one was with like 3 minutes to go at 1-1. I'm like in front of the keeper. He moved his keeper to one side, and I just shot, and I was moving to the other side, and I just overcorrected and missed. And I had that feeling afterwards of, if I was on assisted shooting, that would have been a goal, and I would have won that game. And so I was like, it just got in my head a little bit. So I tried it. I hate it. I hate it like at a fundamental level, like in terms of I like the idea that this game should be about skill and being able to aim the ball correctly into the goal. That feels normal to me. But it's also just like within the game, I do think it's worse. I think it closes off finishes that you can have on precision shooting. So with precision, you can really roof the ball near post, whether the keeper's been moved across or not. If you hit it with enough power and you aim well at the near post, the keeper doesn't save it. Like I've scored about 6 goals in the last few days, hitting the inside of the near post like from quite tight angles, and keepers just don't react well to it. Weak foot, you can't hit a good shot on somebody's weak foot on assisted shooting. On precision, it may as well be their strong foot. Like I'm using 𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬, his 2-star weak foot. I'm scoring loads of goals off of it. And just that feeling of agency, that feeling of if you do put it in a corner, the keeper isn't going to get there. If you're somebody who relies heavily on play styles, so like low driven plus or finesse plus, then I can get behind you choosing assisted, because you don't need precision, because you're already leaning on the crutch of the play styles to finish. But if you're just normally trying to put the ball in the back of the net, I think precision is just still like by far and away the best way to shoot the ball. However, we spoke about a set defense and having to be patient and calm and break it down and wait for them to make a mistake. And you do all of those things and you finally fashioned a brilliant shooting chance. And if the goalkeeper makes a singular step in the direction that you hit the shot, the chance of that ball going in drops from like 90% to about 10%. I hate keeper movement. I hate it. I cannot believe it's still in the game. It is the least skillful element of this video game. You do not have to defend correctly. You've made several mistakes. You've done everything wrong. The person attacking has done everything right to create the opportunity, and you just need to go boop, and all of that work is undone. It's bananas to me that it's still in the game. Anyway, I'm off my high horse. I know that pros like it. And they think that it's a skill gap. It's not a skill gap. It's bullshit. Sorry.
I do think there is one thing. I think the thing that was added in for is the fact that, you know, players will just find a certain angle that works for shooting and just exploit that angle like crazy. And I think since the addition of goalkeeper movement, that's happened a bit less to an extent, because you can move the keeper to increase the chance of them covering that particular angle that you can tell your opponent's always using, but you can't really do anything about. So I think that's where it's been good, but I would agree that it feels like, and to be fair, we're using precision. I think it's a bit different with precision. If the keeper's moved, and you, as you were saying, you roof it near post, you can still score in those situations. But for people using assisted, it must be incredibly frustrating because, as you say, I think if you move the keeper to that side, the chances are that is going to mean that that you don't score because the keeper will save it.
I think that's why playstyle shooting is so prevalent right now, because when you finesse it, when you low driven it, the keeper movement matters a little bit less. And that's why I think people are leaning. It's also a powerful way to score. I get all of that, but
it's interesting actually in terms of playstyles. I think that's another reason to use precision shooting though, because if you're reliant on those playstyles at this point in the game, selection of players you have to choose from is just so much smaller. So I'm using players that don't have shooting playstyles but are really good at other things and scoring incredibly consistently with just regular shots because of how good just a high-powered precision shot is, and low drivens still work quite well without the playstyle on precision as well. So I think that's a good point to kind of add to what you said. But TaZz, we haven't heard from you on this, so we've covered two things, I guess: precision shooting and keeper movement. So you can take your pick or cover both.
Like to precision, I don't have much to add because I'm sticking to this setting for since SC24, so I would be very interested to hear more details about what is so much worse when it comes to using assisted. I feel like from what I heard from Josh, it's mainly precision, like the missing precision basically of using assisted. But I was also able to talk to the dev who was working on precision shooting now for 26 and the improvements, because, well, there has to be some sort of compensation because time finishing was removed. And from what I understood is that the change for 26 was that mainly the shot power is also more increased in comparison to 25, for example, when using precision. So I would assume that you also noticed that the shots felt not as powerful. And this can make a huge difference as well when it comes to those just driven shots on goal, how powerful they feel. And
I was going to say just quickly, I think also it feels like you can power the shots up more, right? And they're still accurate. Whereas if you're on assisted and you get into that red bit of the power bar, you're at real risk of them missing. Whereas on precision, especially if you're close enough to the goal, it's basically a guaranteed goal if you're aiming at the goal. So yeah, I agree.
So I was an advocate of precision from FC24. I still stick to it. I enjoy it. I think from gameplay or like game design, I really admire it because assisted in a way is like just stupid in a way that how you aim with the left stick, what you do, and what this translates into the game. So I don't really like it that much. Also, I made this point before release. Now, if I'm on assisted shooting with the removal of time finishing, talking about agency, I would feel like really irritated about what can I actually do in order to get a really good finish here. Like, what can I contribute? It's just creating the chance, but then I'm down to what the game basically delivers me, and I don't feel like I have an agency on what is coming out of this. And about goalkeeper movement, I would just like to mention that I feel like time finish was great as well in those situations, because with the nerfed goalkeeper movement of 25, where like the player was not able to move the goalkeeper as much anymore, I felt like you were getting away with a lot of shots when you were just also like, I used precision, I was using time finishing, and sometimes I noticed, I didn't pay as much attention to the goalkeeper movement, but the shot still went in. So since I know you two guys were not the biggest fans of time finishing, and on the other side, you complain now about goalkeeper movement, all I'm saying is time finishing was also a counter to goalkeeper movement to some extent.
I want to point out
do whatever you want with that information.
I'm not actually complaining. Josh was complaining. I was giving my balanced side of the argument, and actually think that it's kind of fine. But I think, but I can imagine for people on assisted, I know you're complaining about it from a precision perspective. It must be really tricky. But also, I would say that this cycle more than ever, you have more opportunity to change your angle actually, because generally, your player's more mobile. You can like it feels like you get more touches on the ball to change your shot angle and things like that. So I don't know, it feels a little bit different. Like I feel like more times have I been able to in this game, I've been able to kind of change my shot, and also actually like fake shot. Like if you realize you're going to put it at the keeper, like if you fake it, then you'll often have time to change.
Yeah, I've had to add shot cancel into my like repertoire. So just in those, like just being essentially I hit the shot and then I'm ready over cancel just if the keeper moves the wrong way.
Yeah, and you have so much more kind of time, it feels like, to kind of do that. In past games, if you shot cancelled, it just took too long for you to get the next shot off. Whereas I think because they've increased the time it takes to take a shot on, that actually does work better than it did previously. So I think that's a more advanced but good tip for people who want to kind of beat keeper movement. Is there anything else? I mean, we're going to talk about settings more generally, because I think there's an interesting point to make. I mean, that's precision shooting, but on the defensive side, which is, I think last week I mentioned using or switching to advanced defending from tactical defending. So tactical defending is where you press B or circle, and then the game decides whether you're going to seal out the player or whether you're going to tackle the player. And if you do advanced defending, you then use B or circle to do a tackle, and you use X or A to do a seal out. So you basically decide. And it's interesting because one of the reasons I did this was because it felt like I was going in for tackles, going in for what I thought was going to be a tackle or seal out, and it ended up being a seal out, which wasn't actually very... Well, it just didn't seal out the player, right? It didn't work. And now I have the choice. So basically, I'm not doing that many seal outs. I'm mainly just going in for a tackle. And that feels better. Like I have more control over that. But it's interesting because we were chatting about this before the podcast, TaZz, and you were saying it does seem to be a wider problem people are having with seal outs and not getting seal outs, and bruiser kind of not working and things like that.
Yeah, like I noticed this when I started playing the game. For me, I was missing this kind of satisfying feeling of actually using these physical challenges and winning the ball like this. You still win the ball sometimes, but like more in a subtle way, how your player just gets in front of the opponent and just takes the ball away. And then I was also playing 𝘵𝗫𝗄𝘀, who has the 𝘵𝗫𝗄𝘀 playstyle plus, and it never really popped up, and I was like irritated about this. And overall, I feel like physical challenges, not just 𝘵𝗀𝗀, but physical challenges, they don't work as before. And then I also noticed, like, it was not just me. I saw it in Twitch streams, like people asking the streamer, like, is physical, like advanced defending or like physical challenges not working properly? I also saw it then on X, for example. So I feel like they're like some part of the community is picking up on this, that it's not working as intended. This is at least how I see it right now. So I would have said like, not right now is not the time to switch to advanced defending because it doesn't feel as like useful. But obviously when Ben like is doing now the switch, because he also has the feeling that the physical challenge that he has on tactical defending on the tackling button are not working properly, maybe then this is also helpful to not have the problem anymore of getting those not good physical challenges on the tackle button.
Yeah, actually, just to be kind of explicit about what I mean, is basically like before, because it decides when it's going to do the seal out or do a tackle, it was trying to do a seal out when it wasn't going to win the ball like, quite often.
Yeah.
So now, you know, you can choose to do a seal out if you want, and you can try and do that, or actually I can just try and tackle the ball, which often was actually working, especially if you use hard tackle.
The question is like just the implications of this. And I feel like this is going a little bit also under the radar. I think this contributes also quite heavily why we struggle at the beginning now with defending. Because right now I have a lot of situations where I feel like, the opponent is about to break through. Usually I have like, I have a really strong physical player here in the defense. I would be able to hinder them of going through because I'm using a little bit of my body here to apply some pressure. I can stop them of breaking through. But right now I have the feeling it's not working. And the question now is like, is this intentional? Is this by design? Or is there something which is not working properly? And I think we will just find out. I would expect that there might be some fix at some point, because right now I feel like it's not working as intended, but that's in that way just a feeling that I have. And let's see about it. Because I think the implications on defending, this makes defending much harder because you cannot control the opponent as good in those situations.
Yeah, I mean, it also makes like pace more effective, right? If you're running side by side with the defender, you can't really use their physicality to win the ball off the defender in the same way you're able to in 25. So again, it's another thing that gives the advantage to pacey attackers. So, you know, again, I think that is a good point. It could help just overall with people's defending. And actually, I do think it could be something that if fixed, which I do agree, actually. I've seen people talking about it, and it does seem like some kind of bug. Like if it is fixed, that could actually just swing the, I guess, advantage slightly towards defending, but still keep the kind of manual and kind of like you need to control the players kind of approach to defending, because obviously that only really happens when you're controlling a defender. So yeah, that's pretty good. Anything to add on this point, Josh?
No, I still prefer advanced defending just so that I have the choice. But maybe it's just like something I've not really recognized. It's something that's happened naturally, is that I don't tend to lean on seal out anywhere near as much as I used to. I've actually, in order to try and improve at defending, this sounds so counterintuitive, but in order to try and improve at defending, I've stopped pressing the tackle button because it was something I was doing too often, and you get massively punished for doing it this year. And essentially, I will only press the tackle button if I'm stood on top of my opponent, and like it's a guarantee that I'm going to win the ball. So, like, it doesn't really matter what defending I'm on right now because I'm not pressing the button either way. But yeah, like it's not something I've heavily noticed this year, and you know, like Bruiser, I think was a really good play style to have last year, and I don't know that it's necessarily that brilliant this year, and that would suggest to me that its seal outs have been nerfed or that there's an issue with them. Yeah.
And actually, final point I want to make on settings, and actually probably for the podcast, actually, I say make, I'm not going to make the point, I'm going to get Josh to do it, is about player switching, because I think player switching is something we talked about on the podcast plenty of times over the years. It's changed quite a lot. They've added in more and more settings. They haven't added any new settings for FC26, but I think player switching is extremely important at the moment because of how fast your opponent can move in the attack, and also what we were saying about trying to avoid controlling the defense. And the point is, we're saying avoid controlling the defense basically up until the point at which you need to be making the tackle and actually intervening with your defense, right? So it's not being completely passive, but it makes it much more important that you switch to the defensive player who's one-on-one with their attacker at the right time. That is the most important thing, right? Being there, controlling the player to go 1-to-1 with their, particularly if they've got like a striker and you've got a centre back. You need to be controlling that player. You need to be ready to press the tackle button.
The biggest time for me has been fullbacks, actually. When I watch my gameplay back, when the ball gets passed out to fullbacks, I tended to just second man press with the fullback and run back with a midfielder. But actually, when I control the fullback and instantly put pressure on the winger receiving the ball, people struggle because they feel like they're under pressure straight away and they don't like passing the ball directly backwards. They want to kind of move or do something with the winger. That's been the time that I found switching in is important. But switching in general, I've really struggled with this year. There is a setting in the game that I've always struggled with, which is that the second man presser, you can never switch into. So if you're second man pressing and you RB switch, you can't switch into LB switch. Sorry, you can't switch into the second man presser, and essentially that second man presser is probably the best player and the player that you want to switch into. So I've tried to just remove LB switching completely now from my game and solely gone to stick switching. However, I feel like the sensitivity on stick switching has been like doubled this year compared to last year. There were so many times I felt like I was skipping players when I was right stick switching, to the point that I now have my sensitivity setting on 1. Like I just want it to be a directional switch, not if I hold it, it will switch 2 players over. Just if I want to go to the second player, let me just double tap it so that I can move over and I can have way more agency over who I'm switching to and why I'm switching to them. And going back to like defensive tips, one of the things I wasn't doing enough was switching often enough, going and putting pressure on out wide, but then switching to somebody to just go and cover a passing lane, just maneuver a player out, and then switching back to put the pressure back on. Like, you can't do that if you don't have complete trust in where you're going to switch to. I don't think settings carried over as well as they have done in previous years in terms of like your game settings being the same in 26 as they were in 25. So like auto switching, I have it on air balls and loose balls, but for some people it's kind of just whenever the game decides. Like it's just really heavily assisted. So like some people just want it on air balls, some people just want it on loose balls. Like I think as long as you trust your switch, like if the game auto switches you into the wrong player, as long as you can trust your switching, it's okay, which is why I've gone down to like 1 on the sensitivity.
Yeah, I've been using 2 for quite some time and have found that pretty good. And I agree, especially if you're trying to put pressure on a kind of like a sort of area of the pitch, having that like low sensitivity just means you can go between those players really comfortably without shifting outside of that area, which I think is really good. I think we're pretty much ready to wrap up, so we'll just get some final thoughts from TaZz perhaps before we do that. But yeah, anything to add finally on player switching?
I can understand the idea that when you reduce the sensitivity, that it's more like this, okay, maybe I do just several times, but I make sure that I'm not too specific. I haven't noticed much difference when it comes to player switches this year, and therefore I didn't really change the settings when we got all these options with the sensitivity or like the different ways how the second indicator is assigned to the player. I was trying this out quite a lot, but at some point I just noticed I feel like nothing is really like, because I was always like, we are missing these kind of settings, these kind of ways to tailor this to our specific needs. But then at some point I noticed like, no matter what I try out, there's always something that it's not working as I would like to do it. And I have to make compromises, basically. Sometimes I would need the reduced sensitivity. Sometimes I would need the higher sensitivity. And the same how they assign the second player indicator. So at some point I was like, okay, I'm not going to bother with that anymore. And I will just try to more or less optimize or get used to this default settings more or less. They can be like, I like the idea, like reducing the sensitivity as you just explained. And maybe I think this can be really helpful because to some extent it makes the player switching easy. To like maybe the balance between right stick switching and just using the L1 or LB button switch. I think there is a lot of room and place for right stick switches. But I think there are situations when it just makes more sense to do a one player switch with a button. And these are the situations when the opponent just plays a vertical pass, like from midfield to the attacker. In those situations, like just this using the L1, LB button switch to reset, because can be very clumsy or very hard to get the right player when you're switching back like this. And this is unnecessarily hard, I would say. Just do one button switch, reset. And I like to use those kind of reset switches because it gets me back into the action where it's needed. Now I have the central point. Now I can come back to what will the opponent do next? Will they try to beat me 1v1? Will they try to play through the open man or like player on the side? So then I go to right stick switches. So you just combining this very fluently can help quite a lot. And I would advise to, in particular, those reset switches, getting to a central point, which is close to the action, I feel like is a very important aspect of the player switching.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, I think with the lower sensitivity, that is quite kind of important as well because it moves you around quicker rather than having to flick through multiple players. But yeah, right. I think that does bring us to the end of the podcast. Loads of tips packed into this one. But if you want even more and in more depth, then TaZz, you have a place for people to go. And there's currently an offer. It's not exclusive to us. Normally it's exclusive to us. This time it isn't, which, we're fine with. It is the start of a cycle. We understand. But yeah, tell people about the Guide Plus.
Yeah, exactly. So like our target is to help you to just learn the game fundamentally, but also like what is quite strong in the game right now. I think I already brought up several topics. We have the season pass, 10 courses, over 100 lessons that we aim for in the season. I think last season it was way more anyways. So learn in a structured way at the Guide Plus. Go to theguide.gg to find more about it. And the early bird offer ends on Friday, 3rd of October. So be fast about it.
Nice. Yeah. And there'll be like a little link in the description as per usual. And, if you want more tips, you could listen to last week's gameplay episode, which was a supporter exclusive. If you are a supporter, head over and listen to that. And there's also this week's content episode, which was actually, Josh, you mentioned at the start, there were 2 supporter episodes between this one and the last episode. So yeah, definitely head over and listen to those if you're a supporter. If you're not yet a supporter, then you can become a supporter. And it's just £3 a month for double the podcast content, unless you buy it through Apple because they charge loads of fees. So do it through Patreon itself if you can. So yeah, you get double the podcast episodes. And it's really quick and easy to sign up. Just head over to Patreon. There's a link in the description, or just search support for weekly. And yes, Josh, thank you very much for joining us on this podcast.
Yeah, it's been a good one. If you are a coaching skeptic, as I mentioned it earlier, but like I literally just showed one game to kind of 2 different very high rated players and spent half an hour with them just talking through the game with me, and it's completely changed the way that I'm playing, and I feel like I'm having much more fun. So there's definitely value in it, and you will definitely get something out of it. So I'll plug TaZz.
Yeah, nice. I should say thank you very much to all you listeners joining us on this one. And I say listeners, also people watching, of course, seeing TaZz's beautiful face for the first time, potentially, unless they've seen you before, of course, which they might have done. And if you enjoyed this episode, do leave a like, subscribe on YouTube, drop a comment. We do go through all of them. And yeah, a big thank you to all you supporters supporting the podcast, keeping it going. It is hugely appreciated. And a big thank you to those icon patrons:
Dave B, Darren W, Hugh J, Rob W, Josh R, Ralph, Brian, Michael B, Adam R, Make B, Michael H, Rob S, Michael K, Neil P, Jake S, Tom B, Alex M, Damon H, L, James B, Sam K, The Shirt Locker, Lee A, Chris G, Mark M, Dom P, Rob P, Roger D, Waterman, Also Ran, and Juicy. Plus a special thanks to Luke M, Dave B, Hugh J, Tom M, Darren W, and Pato Foot for advice and production assistance. Before I leave you, just one more thing to add though. Ultimate Team is a bit like life really. It has its many ups and downs. If you're having a few more downs than ups in real life in these more difficult times, then please don't feel that you're alone or need to struggle on without taking action. If you go to thecalmzone.net, there's loads of resources, advice, support, or even just a friendly chat for anyone who needs it. If it sounds like it could help you, then head over to thecalmzone.net. And for now, have a good one, and I'll catch you on the next podcast.